Good evening, and welcome to the Police Accountability Board, Wednesday, November 30th, 2022. I'm going to start off with roll call. Um,
Paul Rivers, present.
James Gormley, present.
Ricardo Morales, present.
Arnetta Wire, present.
Nellie Hutt. And who do we have on call?
Is that Mr. Attorney online?
All I see is a call in, but let me try to set a request on you. 1 second.
I'm a charity here.
Okay. All right.
Janet, did you get me?
Yeah.
We okay? So, we have our student member on call, and I'd like for you to introduce yourself and just give her a little blurb about, who you are, if you would, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Abisola Ayola. I'm a junior at Wild Lake High School, and I am the student member of the board for this school year.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes. From November 9th, 2022. Has everyone had an opportunity to take a look? Any substantive changes that we should be concerned about? Just take a moment. Also, you'll recall that any other changes, grammatical, editorial, that kind of thing, we're to let Kiana know. She'll make that adjustment.
So I do have a question in terms of the agenda for number 5, where it says agenda. Where it says the board provided the following direction to staff for the November 30th, 22. What does that mean exactly?
So at the last meeting, we went over the, whatever y'all wanted on the agenda, and that's how it got on there. So you don't remember?
No, I guess I'm concerned, not concerned, but I'm trying to figure out the language, because I think the board sets the agenda. We don't
Correct.
provide direction to the staff to set our agenda. The board sets the agenda, correct?
Yes, but I'm saying so provided the following direction, y'all told us what y'all
Okay.
wanted on the agenda.
All right.
You get what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. Hey, we have, staff members. Yeah,
Do we need a motion to approve
I'm sorry.
Do we need a motion to approve the minutes? If
I'm so
so,
sorry.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second.
Thank you. Meeting is on. Just 1 second, I'm sorry.
Can we do a roll
The vote, can we have it?
Hmm?
Can we call for the vote and then, can we call for the vote, please?
Call for the question.
All approve?
Huh?
Any,
Paul, approving the minutes, Paul. Yes.
yes, okay. I
Ricardo.
think it is unanimous.
I just said Ricardo's, yeah.
Oh, okay. And the next thing on the agenda is the comments on the rules of procedure. And we received one set of comments, and they have been distributed to the board. And we will take those comments into consideration in completing the annual report. Do we have any discussion on the annual report that anybody would want to discuss in particular?
Are we on the minutes or?
I'm so sorry. No, we are not on the minutes. We approved the minutes. Should we are on the minutes?
No,
now?
I'm saying we did.
Sorry, the comments on the public hearing.
Yeah,
Yes.
Public hearing, not the annual.
Mhm.
Okay.
Do you have discussion?
No.
Okay,
I just wanted to make sure what we,
okay, no one has discussion. Okay, let's move on to the draft ACC legislation and discussion.
Yeah, we gave those out at the last meeting. Was there anything?
I must,
That's okay, that's okay.
yeah, so
I'm coming off of a whole bunch of stuff.
well, and I'm more than typical brain fog, so my apologies. I thought we were on the minutes there. Certainly on the
Okay,
annual report. I will have some comments on that.
okay,
We received a revised version today. I haven't had a chance to go through it all yet, but I ran a compare. So I do have some comments. They'll pick up broadly the comments I provided previously on the draft report.
okay,
And I can go through those now if that's appropriate.
just 1 second, please.
Okay, y'all just gonna.
Okay, I got that. Okay.
Great. So I'm on the introductory letter from the chair. And we talked about this at the last meeting, the last sentence, last paragraph, last sentence, where it says we will meet quarterly. I think we certainly discussed conforming that to what we had agreed, which was quarterly or more often, more frequently as needed.
Make sure you're looking at the most recent version.
But it says we will meet at least quarterly.
Oh, at least.
So yeah, you should use that.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Yep. That's my comments withdrawn or corrected. Thank you, Sana.
I'm sorry, no, take your time.
I'm looking at the compare
Take your
version.
time.
Yeah, thanks. Well,
Unless someone else has something that they want to, yeah? We're good. While we're, waiting for Jim to proceed, I have been kind of out of whack for a couple of weeks. And I have not had a chance to review this letter. I have looked at it and I am going to have some changes. So what I will do, just an effort, time and stuff, what I will do, I will include my changes and they will be bolded, just as here, and I'll send it out for you guys to kind of take a look at it. And I'll do that, in the next couple of days.
Just looking at what I have sent, just a grammatical piece on page 3. The paragraph, the very last sentence, it says set out the following responsibility of 4 PAB members. That's still on the newest, the latest one. So again, page 3.
Okay, set
fifth
out.
paragraph, where it says last
Okay.
sentence, set out the following responsibilities of 4
Yeah. Okay, got
PAB
you.
members.
Mhm. Thank you.
I'll say just two things from my review very quickly. First of all, it was done after I got back from tennis this afternoon. I can't tell you that I was busy doing other important stuff, but I haven't had a great chance to look at all of this. Having said that, and I expect this was a shared pen by a lot of people. My first comment is this is well done. This is a good report. It shows, I think, the work that we've done and the work we intend to do, and it's well articulated. So that's my overall general comment. Specifically, there was one set of provisions that I had included on my prior inputs, which talked about us looking to introduce county legislation. And let me just mention that I'm not going to be pushing for that in the report. I don't think it needs to be in the report. However, when we get to our discussion, whether it's tonight or next week, on the overall mission of the board, I'll look forward to discussing that particular topic amongst the other topics. It goes to me to what the tools are that we will need to do our job that we still have to talk about. So while I'm more than happy with the deletion of the non-inclusion of my action item, here's what we're going to be doing next year. One, work with the county government on legislation to give us the tools we need, was the language I put in there. It's not in the final draft, and I'm perfectly okay with that. But I wanted to bookmark that point for discussion when we're talking about the mission of the board. And that's all my comments.
Thank you, Jim. And you have one more, or you're finished?
That's it.
Just one more in terms of grammatical piece on it, again, from last week, whenever we met last time. But page 13, the one that starts with, bolded saying statewide police disciplinary matrix. So the very last sentence,
Is that on page 13?
page 13,
What item?
appendix and terms,
Okay,
where it says statewide police disciplinary matrix. At the very bottom, well, that last sentence, categories of violations labeled A through F, and A recommends a range. So let's remove an A from there.
okay,
I'm assuming this and recommends a range of administrators.
yes.
Okay,
Thank
And
you.
just put a period at the end of that
yeah.
sentence.
Can I interject very quickly? I'm sorry. Because we advertised that this meeting would be for a public hearing, I'm not there, so I don't know. Are there any members of the public that's there waiting to comment on the rules?
No,
Yeah.
Okay, do we have anyone waiting online to provide comments?
At what point?
He's had a hand up the entire time.
Oh,
Okay.
So because we advertised that it'd be at 6, I would recommend that the board hold off consideration of this annual report until we give members of the public opportunity to provide, because that's really the purpose of this meeting, is the public hearing to get comment from the public. And because of the time it was advertised, I'd recommend we do that first and then conduct substantive business afterwards. And then before we open up the floor for the public comment from anyone that's waiting, would the board like to discuss what parameters they'd like to use to receive public comment, such as will there be time limits on comments? I think the board was discussing 3 minutes based on the county council doing that. And then whether or not the board would give any responses. I'm assuming the board would just take all comments under advisement and then proceed accordingly. So we should discuss that and then go to the public hearing portion before we do any substantive business, would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Sagan. I think that's an excellent recommendation. Is there any suggestion otherwise?
No, I would make suggestion that we limit it to 3 minutes
Oh,
for
yes,
response
we were definitely gonna do that.
and keep it to like the county. And that way we'll do the same thing as the county council does. And that way we stay in formation with everyone else.
If that's the intent, then is someone gonna make a motion to limit all public comment to 3 minutes? Because we should take off, because that has to be a decision that the board makes as a body. So I would
I'll
recommend.
make the motion. I'll make the motion to limit all public comments to 3 minutes and that we would take anything provided under consideration. I make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion?
All,
Let's take a vote. Or approve or disapprove?
all aye.
Approved, Jim.
Ricardo, but I was approved.
I approve.
I approve. I think it's unanimous.
And we have some.
Herman?
I'm sorry, Herman. I'm so sorry.
For the record, I approve.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, all right, so those are the rules of engagement. The public comments will be limited to 3 minutes and.
Okay. And for purposes of the record, is it accurate that there are no members of the public who are present in person to make any comments? Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then Greg, can you tell us how many attendees we have online that are members of the public?
There are 2 members of the public in attendance.
Okay. Could we, is that Joel Hurwitz and Tammy Halligan?
Yes.
Okay. Can we unmute them and bring them in to see if they are present for purposes of making a comment on the rules of procedure, or whether they're just present just to observe the meeting?
Who's got his hand up?
Yes, Joe has his hand up and he put in a chat that he is here for the public meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so he does want to comment.
That is correct. And
What
then
about Ms. Hamilton?
there is nothing from Tammy.
Okay.
Or
Can we bring her on to ask her whether she's just observing or present to make a comment on the rules?
Yeah.
Do you want me on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Who's this?
That's your for police department.
Okay. I sent the request to say to unmute herself.
Excuse me. Why is this a people the same thing and then? I don't know. And Hamilton, to Ms. Hamilton, Hamilton, yeah.
Hi,
Okay.
I'm just here to observe.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Horowitz?
Yeah.
All right. Request has been sent to Joel Horowitz.
Okay, so we could is the board ready to receive comments from Mr. Horowitz?
Are we ready?
Yes.
Yes, we
I
are.
think we are. We just need to be introduced and let them know the rules that we placed.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So I could advise him if we could bring him in.
Easy. Joel's been unmuted.
He's unmuted.
Yes.
Okay, Sega, did you want to introduce that or I? Did I just hear you say that you would do it?
Oh, no, actually, Ms. Hott, can you do it?
Okay,
Like, just
sure,
having
of
the-
course, of course. I misunderstood. Thank you. Mr. Horace, I understand that you want to, you're here and you want to speak publicly, and that's fine. We do have a couple of rules, just very simply. You will be given 3 minutes, and anything that you say, we will certainly take under advisement.
Right. If you were talking, I couldn't hear my
Okay,
audio, everything froze. I heard the end of it.
okay, so can you hear me now?
I hear you. You hear me okay?
Yes, thank you. It's our understanding that you're here to speak on the rules of procedure. And you may do so, and you will be limited to 3 minutes. And anything that you say, we will certainly take under advisement.
All right. Joel Hurwitz, Columbia, you received my edits this morning. I heard you mention that. Some of them are typos, some of them are stylistic, some of them are formatting, and others are organization, and some are just to correct some things that are wrong. So like in the 101, subtitle 2 is too broad. It's only 207 of subtitle. In 102, I moved some things around because your organization section in 103 seems to have places in other parts that really belong in the organization. So I did that. In what 102B, the fact that you copied from the county code, the basic that there's 7 of you, but left out the more important fact that the members need to make sure they don't have convictions, and if they do, they have to report them. That seems more important to be in there than stuff that you have no control over. In 103, we have a problem with the number of days in this under different parts of the law in the county code of when you're mentioning 3 calendar days or 3 business days. For notice for meetings, it seems to be calendar days into the county code. For the complaint procedures, it's 3 business days according to the county code and the general provisions article. Let's see. So again, a lot of my comments, I hope they're self-explanatory, but I have noticed a couple of things I missed in 105. A diddly 3, the citation's incomplete. I believe it's missing an A after 3102. Similarly, in B, reporting, the citation to 3102 is also incomplete. I believe it should be the A4 double I.
Wait, hold on, where's he at, 105? Okay,
And,
got you.
Seems you should have some method to cure an incomplete complaint. Obviously, if the people don't give their name, you can't do that, but there seems to be no procedure. If the person doesn't know the name of the police officer, how are they supposed to find that out if they're just angry at the police officer but didn't get their name and need the help in finding that?
Joel, we're down to 15 seconds. I'm the unofficial timekeeper. Just wanted to mention that to you. Maybe you should be thinking wrapping up soon.
Right, well, in the amendment section, I numbered it 201 because you did this nice numbering system, but everything's under 1 point something, which seems too important if you're going to do it that way. And amendments, which is basically copied from the county code, seem to be a different topic. And also I've shared that the fire investigator should be somewhere in your documents so that it's not just lost, that he's technically a police officer for purposes of PAB. So guess my time's up. Do you have any questions about what I submitted to you?
I don't see any questions here, but if questions should come up, we will certainly reach out and have you further advise if that's necessary.
Well, I hope your council will look at it. I believe a number of things are just missed from original drafting. And the fact that it seemed cobbled together from different places is why it gets repeated,
Okay.
dealing with the chair and openness in multiple places.
Okay, thank you.
Realize shorter.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you. We've taken them under advisement. Okay.
Are there any other members, Greg, are there any other members of the public that are waiting virtually to make any comments or who have joined since we last checked?
No.
Okay, so I just want the record to reflect that we don't see anyone virtually waiting to make a public comment on the rules of procedure. Is it also true that there's no one no member of the public has come in person since we last checked to make any comments on the rules?
That
That's
is correct,
correct.
Sagan.
Okay, so the record will reflect that we don't have anyone waiting virtually or in person. So the board is free to continue conducting substantive business, and it's up to the board to decide whether if someone comes online or comes personally to make any comment, whether you guys will reopen the floor for public comment on the rules of procedure after you've finished substantive business, which you have on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sega. Thank you.
Additionally, one last thing is, the board may move today to adopt the rules of procedure and can do so by vote. We have a quorum. You've waited the requisite 30 days to provide notice to the public about any comments on the rules of procedure, and now you've received the written and oral comments of at least one member of the public. We don't appear to have any more. So based on that, if there's nothing in the comments provided already that you all would like to take under consideration and make edits to the rules of procedure, then the rules of procedure are ripe now for you all to vote to adopt them. If you do decide to vote and adopt the rules today, they will not become immediately effective. What will have to happen is our executive secretary will have to file a copy of the rules that would be adopted to the county executive and the executive secretary of the county council, a certified copy to each of them. and then the rules would become effective when filed with the county executive.
Okay, thank you, Sega. I, have not had an opportunity to go through all of, Joel's comments. Has everyone else had that opportunity to go through? So I would like to give us a couple of days, or, I don't want to stretch it out more than a couple of days if possible, to give everyone an opportunity to, take a look at his comments, and I'm most concerned with substantive comments. I mean, it's always, anything can always be improved, stylistically and so forth, but just in terms of substantive, if you would work with me on substantive comments and get those to, Kiana in the next, what do you think you need for that? And today is Wednesday.
I think a couple, well, I was gonna say,
Nellie, I would suggest that to avoid the risk of running afoul of any Open Meetings Act provisions, that
Okay.
if you guys would like to take additional time to take under advisement the suggestions made by the written comments provided by Mr. Hurwitz, you could do that, and then you maybe the better way to do it to be in compliance with the Open Meetings Act is to reconvene at the next meeting concerning this. So this should be on the agenda for the next meeting. And then you all could vote on whether or not you want to incorporate any edits and then move to adopt at that time.
I'm fine with that. Is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
I mean,
Yes.
that's apparently we don't want to run afoul of anything.
Okay.
then we have the good
Just
fortune of
so,
a meeting coming up in 7 days, so we can do it quickly.
Say, I'm sorry,
can someone just remind me, when is the next meeting?
in a
December
week,
the 7th,
in a week.
yeah.
Next week.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
That'll work.
Okay.
So by that time, we will have looked at everything and considered and be ready.
And be ready to vote on.
Okay?
Okay.
Hey, moving right along.
Can I?
Yes, please, of course you can.
Can I make a request that, in terms of, and I don't know the, veracity of what the gentleman wrote, but it seems like he's pretty sure that some of the area sections or laws are misquoted or not quoted fully.
Mhm.
And some of the things that well, we can talk about that later, but those pieces, if our legal counsel could work with our executive secretary to make sure that what they write there is exactly what it's on the books,
Mhm.
and that we're referencing the correct information.
Mhm. Yeah,
If I could make that request.
that's a good suggestion, yeah.
Yeah, so I will say this, when these rules were drafted and I took provisions from the county code, I took them verbatim. I think what Mr. Hurwitz is saying is that we included provisions from the county council and omitted other portions, and he feels as though other portions should have been also included, is what I understand, because I went through his comments. So it's not, I don't think that he's saying we've misquoted the statutory provisions, but I'd be happy to look at the statutory provisions again, make sure they're the proper site. And I could do that and get back to Kiana about it. And what we could do is I could give legal advice on the proposed changes made by that we've received in writing, and we could have that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Thank you, Sega. I did a cursory review this afternoon. I think, in some parts, he writes out the word section rather than the little,
Correct.
that kind of thing. I mean, that doesn't bother me, but I mean, if we need to be like technically correct, that's fine. It doesn't, it points to the section for me, but I don't wanna quibble with that. So say I'll just leave those kind of things up to you, and you can let us know kind of how to proceed.
Well, I'll just say that I could give legal advice on the proposed changes, on whether or not I believe that the proposed changes make any legal sufficiency changes. to the
Yes.
rules of procedure. And I'd be happy to give advice to the board about that, but ultimately it's about the board, it's up to the board to vote and decide what changes will be incorporated and what changes will not. But I will be happy to be ready at our next meeting for me to give legal advice on the rules of procedure, on the proposed comments to the, or on the actual comments made on the proposed rules of procedure.
Right. I think that's what we're looking for. Thank you.
Right.
Yes.
No, I'm just saying thank you.
Oh, okay. I really jumped. Okay, thank you. All right, where are we?
Y'all wanna go back to the report over?
The annual report.
Yeah, let's go back to our.
I think one of Sega's points there was, are we going to leave the public hearing open, or close the public hearing and close the agenda item with respect to any further comments from the public?
Yes,
Thank you, Jim. That's a good point. You guys could decide what you want to do with respect to that and make a vote.
all right. It was a pleasure. I think we should close.
I have the same view, that I think that
Okay.
we should close, so I can make a motion to close that particular agenda item, which is the public hearing on the proposed rules. Propose to close that.
I second.
Any discussion? Okay, vote. Opposed,
Supporting, yes.
it's unanimous.
And Herman as well.
Herman?
Did you raise your hand or?
I raise my hand in support of closing out that part of the agenda.
Thank you, thank you.
Ms. Hutt, I would just say, and we do have to do a roll call on the vote. I know that
Okay.
it's unanimous, but we have to get everyone's vote on the record.
Okay, one second.
I will second.
Okay, then we need to be on the record. I vote, we close the meeting. Close the public meeting.
Paul, close.
Jim Gormley, close, yes.
Ricardo Morales, close.
Arnetta Wire, I agree to close it.
Herman,
Close.
on the record, we got everything?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we closed at 6:42.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Close the public meeting. And now we are in closed session.
No.
I'm sorry, you had to make a motion?
We're not in closed session.
I still think, well, I don't think we'll continue to have a public hearing.
Yeah.
Public just vote.
I'm sorry, close to that section. Thank you guys for working with me.
That's all right. We're still in. We're not.
I nearly said that when I made the motion, so.
I know.
I'm going down the same
Right.
path that I just did as well. yeah.
Right. All right, so. Doing the annual report discussion.
We are on the annual report discussion. Okay, Fiona, you have those previous.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, any other, observations or comments on the annual report?
Yes, were you finished?
I was finished, yes.
Okay, yes. I do. Specifically on page 9, the future activities. The first bullet, the first, little
Paragraph.
identify and review law enforcement trends.
Mhm.
The second sentence just appears to be a run-on sentence. I'm not really sure about how to break it up. It just seems like a period needs to be after transparency, but then it says, and make recommendations to the county executive and council.
Okay, we'll work.
So just rephrase it.
Right,
And then I'm at the bottom, the third one from the bottom, to take part in ride-alongs,
Oh, yeah.
just spelling, error. And then the next one down, the boards, it's a board apostrophe S. That's not accurate either. Something needs to be done with that.
okay.
What about somewhere else? But for, I'll need to read it again,
Okay,
actually. But because I did not have the opportunity to read it right before this meeting. But grammatical, changes, we can just send directly to Kiana, just like the minutes, correct?
Yeah.
mhm.
Okay, that's fine. Then we will work with it from that perspective.
I've also made note of it, so we'll just communicate that.
If I can just agree with that, I ran a compare this afternoon. I was looking for the macro issues. I think that this could benefit from one, all of us, but one proofread through and to find anything that could be cleaned up.
Absolutely. We want to present our best product, okay? So,
Mhm.
you know,
And when does this have to get to the, graphics people?
Put it inside of it, yeah. So,
Okay, so you all are fine internally, no matter how much time we take?
yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yana, we may need to get it by the 15th at least. Is that, I'm sorry to bust in there, but probably the 15th of December to give people time during the holidays because it's due by the 31st. Sorry.
No, that's fine. And in my mind, I'm still thinking today's November the 30th. Is it our
Yeah.
intention to have it wrapped up anyway by, next board meeting?
well,
Yeah, that would be if there's anything after the next board meeting, we'd like to just kind of get it all completed for you guys by the 15th so that it can, if there's any other small little changes before we put it up on the web by the 31st. That's all. Sorry, this is Michelle.
thank you.
Thank you.
No worries.
We are agreeing that we're gonna have our comments both on the annual report and I don't know if we have any other things on the rules. All of this stuff will be ready. All your comments and stuff will be ready by our next board meeting. Is that okay? And if there's any, you may, a day or two later may be okay, but if we can kind of work toward that, it would certainly be appreciated. Okay. Where are we?
One request that I'd like to make of the executive secretary, when giving us photocopies of stuff, if you could date them on the front of revised on this date or revised, like whatever, just so I know, if I have several iterations, I'm looking to see which one is the latest one. So if you could just put the front,
So the date from the last one said the 20th. No, the date from the last one was the date that we had, and this one says the 29th today.
okay.
These are on all
Not just
documents.
this, all
Mhm.
documents.
all documents.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, can we move on now? Okay, great. All right, we're at the ACC legislation.
We're not
And
gonna,
we're gonna do that?
yeah, we won't have to, because they gave them a new copy. I sent out the new copy of it, the last meeting, so y'all still got time until the next meeting to go.
Okay, hold on a second. So again, okay, so we're gonna include the legislation with everything else that we are gonna be ready to report on.
I provided some comments on the draft ACC legislation. I'm ready to provide some comments and I did send them around. I think we had targeted this for an agenda item for tonight. But I can carry my comments over to the next meeting if that's more convenient.
Yeah, it would be more convenient for me,
Okay.
if you would, please.
Yep, okay. Sure.
Okay, and okay, Jim, this is where you wanted to discuss,
Yeah, I printed out this, PowerPoint, so if y'all wanna,
I'm sorry,
I printed out the PowerPoint that you sent.
okay.
Thank
That's
you.
it.
That's okay.
I actually have copies of these slides for everyone if you'd like that. You'd burn up a lot of ink. Maybe a good thing, maybe not. Sure. I just wanted to have the opportunity. I think this is obviously a conversation and a discussion I've been looking to have for a while, so I appreciate the opportunity. Anyone else? Herman, this was emailed earlier to you. It's the earlier today. I hope you have access to the slides.
I do.
Excellent, excellent.
Hold on, before you start, I'm still writing something. Give me 1 second. All right, I'm ready.
Very good. So I think over the course of the last few meetings, we've sort of talked about the need to really have a discussion and then an agreement on what our roles might be. We obviously got some very specific roles. Select ACC members is one that we focused on recently, but there's also a couple of mandates in the legislation that I wanted to focus on, and that's why I put these just a couple of slides together to identify those. And then to have a, to hopefully stimulate a discussion about what we think our role and activities should or might be as a result of these statutory mandates. So if I'm on slide 2, these are the 2 statutory provisions that I think create mandates and duties for us. They're at a very top level. So the ACC regulations, they're emergency regulations at the moment, but they're being finalized currently, lay out the top level responsibility of the PAB to ensure public accountability and transparency over the powers exercised by law enforcement agencies. That's right there in the COMA. So when a law enforcement agency in our county exercises its police powers, it is, under the law, our responsibility to ensure public accountability and transparency with respect to the exercise of those powers. I'll also highlight the state law that set up the Police Accountability Boards, the Maryland Police Accountability Act 2021, which lays out another top level but very sweeping mandate for us as colleagues here on the Police Accountability Board, and that is to work with law enforcement agencies and the county government to improve matters of policing. So 2 active verbs, if I can call them those: ensure and shall work. Moving to slide 3, which is going to pick up on the first of those 2. Separate. The word ensure is a very strong word in the regulations. So much so that I wanted to just pull it out and have a look at it. So the first thing that came up on my Google was the Merriam-Webster, and there it is. It's to make sure, certain, or safe. So our role in ensuring that when the law enforcement agency exercises its powers, that we make sure, we make certain that there will be public accountability and transparency. So what should our role be in ensuring accountability and transparency is the question. And I focus in answering, or at least suggesting an answer, on the more serious incidents of potential police misconduct in our county, should they arise. They're called critical incidents, I think, in the sort of parlance. And it's a critical incident is an officer involved shooting or other use of force causing a serious injury. So focusing on what our role might be in ensuring police accountability in the event of a critical incident is what I wanted to focus on with respect to this aspect of our role. The verb ensure means not doing nothing, and I sort of wanted to start by saying that, yes, we see that the police misconduct itself will be investigated by a law enforcement agency, the alleged or potential police misconduct, and it will then, the discipline that comes out of that investigation will be reviewed by the Administrative Charging Committee. So our role is not, should not be, and is not defined as in any way an investigative role on a critical incident in our county. But we are to ensure police accountability and transparency whenever the law enforcement agency exercises its police powers. So not an investigative role, but certainly an active role, in my mind, a forward-facing, upfront role exercised in the aftermath of a critical incident in our county, as the law enforcement agency exercises its police powers and handles that incident. through the investigation and through the possible prosecution if there is a finding of misconduct. So trying to pull that down into something pragmatic and practical. What would we do as a board? You know, we would come together for a meeting. What would we do if we're confronted with, and I hope we never are, but if we're confronted with a critical incident in our county, what will we do to ensure police accountability and transparency, which is our statutory duty, which is our legal duty to do? And I would say that our role, I'll now try, having raised the rhetorical question, let me give you my version of the answer, but I'd very much like to stimulate a discussion and hear the thoughts of each of our colleagues here on the board on this. But for me, it feels like the role should be, or my view is that the role should be that we ensure that accountability is being prioritized amongst many other things. The fact-finding, the investigation, and the prosecution if there is an issue that needs to be prosecuted. The law enforcement work being done by the law enforcement agency is their work. Our work is to ensure that accountability is being prioritized. And I wanted to try and give a few practical examples, a few practical thoughts, trying to pull this down from just the words of the statute to what would it mean if we're confronted with an officer-involved shooting or a serious injury coming from a use of force. And I look at some of the more tragic incidents in our country over the last 2 years for some examples where I think that a police accountability board, if it had been in place, would have had a significant role to play. So if we look at two separate prosecutors acting with a blatant conflict of interest while making prosecutorial decisions or influencing police actions, that was the Armand Arbery case in Brunswick, Georgia. A police accountability board would have been looking at the potential for a conflict of interest with respect to the folks involved in the prosecutorial decisions. Another example where a law enforcement agency improperly claimed that there was no body-worn camera recording of a critical incident, when in fact there was one. And that's the Breonna Taylor case in Louisville, Kentucky in 2020. If a police accountability board had been in place, that would not have happened. Another example, I've got two more examples, trying to get as practical as I can as to what I think we would be doing in the event of a critical incident in our county, where a law enforcement agency claimed that an individual was engaged in erratic and threatening behavior, when the body-worn camera recording, which was delayed for more than a year and only released under a court order, showed otherwise. And that is the Laquan McDonald case in Chicago in 2014. The failure to check for gun residue on an individual after that individual was shot due to a claimed miscommunication. So a failure to do the most basic investigative steps due to a miscommunication between the investigators. That's the Quamena Okran case in Montgomery County last year. I think that if there'd been a police accountability board in place for each one of those incidents, then there is a chance that those particular irregularities that undermined accountability would not have happened. And I would say that in our county, this police accountability board, armed with the right tools, nothing like that would happen on our watch either. And that's what I think our role should be. So moving very quickly then to slide 4. I say that would not happen in our county if we're fulfilling our role of ensuring accountability. We would need the tools to be able to do that. And I've talked about what I think our tools should be on several earlier meetings. I think that the Police Accountability Board, we should have the ability to go and look at copies of law enforcement agency records that relate, one, to accountability and transparency we talked about at the last meeting, and I'm delighted that we've included access to police department records and reports relating to accountability and transparency in the report. I think that's important. I also think that we need to have the ability to look at body-worn camera recordings relating to a critical incident if one were to occur in a county. So that is not ready access to all body-worn camera recordings, no matter what the incident is. I'm focused upon those critical incidents, what our role should be in those circumstances. We should be able to go and look at a body-worn camera recording, or the chair at the very least, should be able to go and look at a body worn camera recording if there's a critical incident in our county. I also think we need to work on a set of metrics for tracking accountability. We have that in our annual report as well. I'm going to stop there because that's the heart of what I wanted to raise tonight. But I'll just mention slide 5. This is the second prong of our statutory duties, and that is working with the Howard County Police Department and the Sheriff's Office to improve matters of policing. I have a proposal here. Can I suggest that each of you take some time to read this? I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about what I would like to do, or what I would like us to do, or to work with the police department to improve their compliance program. And I'll talk more about that after you've had a chance to digest what's here in the slide. I think I've had enough of the horn here tonight already. So.
I got a question.
Sure.
I know what you said about seeing data, but isn't that the job of the ACC, present that data? Wouldn't it be better for the ACC who's doing the job and to reviewing that, to present that to the PAB at the time when they've come up with a decision, to present that to the PAB what their findings are, and then have the PAB review it? Wouldn't it be better as a reviewing, instead of an investigative finding position that the ACC is doing the actual findings, and then what they would do is present their findings to the PAB to review? I think that would be, to me, that's what I think would be a better opportunity, because you'll get to see what they found, but you're not recreating the wheel. I mean, that's what I think. I don't know.
I think, so a couple of thoughts on that. I think the ACC has got a different role than the PAB. I mean, the law says ACC's role is to review the law enforcement agency's investigation and recommendation for discipline. It's a very specific job. It is not to ensure police accountability and transparency whenever the police exercises its powers, which is our job. So we have different statutory duties. Ours is not nothing. Ours is not to sit by while the law enforcement agency exercises its police power, conducts its investigation, recommends discipline, and then the ACC takes that file and they separately review and then produce its own recommendation for discipline, probably more than a year after the critical incident. So we have a timing issue. We have a different role entirely than the Administrative Charging Committee. Ours is not to investigate.
Right, that's what.
But the ACC's role is to investigate, but not to look more generally at whether accountability is being emphasized. Whether that a prosecutor is operating under a blatant conflict of interest and getting away with it, right? Or whether, and I'm not suggesting for one moment that good people in the law enforcement agencies in our county would in any way be likely to do this, but were there to be a misrepresentation on a withheld body-worn camera reporting to the public, that's not going to happen on our watch, and that is not the role of the ACC either. So I see different roles.
But the ACC,
statutory.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the
No,
the ACC is responsible to review the camera footage on incidents. So they would have to review all of the footage. It'd have to be presented to all of them. They would have to sit there and look at everything that comes in them. And when Internal Affairs does their background investigations, they would have to present that to the ACC, and the ACC has the opportunity then to ask for any additional footage to be reviewed before anything was being passed down. So what my thought is, at that point, wouldn't they be able to present that to the PAB to go, look, this is what our findings are, and this is what our recommendations are. And at that point, the accountability board can make them accountable for the issues. That's just what I'm thinking. I mean, anybody else can step in.
Well, and I'll just make the point, and then
And I'll leave it alone at this point.
yeah, and then I'll do the same thing, Paul. But I'll just make the point that the role that I see and that I'm talking about here is a forward-facing, proactive accountability role in the aftermath of a critical incident. The ACC won't get the file, you tell me, but in my own experience, for 6 months or more after the critical incident, they won't complete their work. They have a statutory obligation to complete the work within a year, during which time the ACC is under absolute confidentiality obligation. So there's no forward-facing role that the ACC can undertake to build public trust, to encourage accountability, to encourage transparency during the investigation. It's too late to leave it to the ACC. It's years too late to leave it to the ACC, and it would not, an ACC would not have been able to fulfill the roles in Brunswick, Georgia, in Louisville, Kentucky, in Chicago, and in Montgomery County that I'm talking about.
I have a question.
Step in, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
What Jim is alluding to is the criminal investigation, not the internal investigation. Yes, in some of those cases, it was a poor criminal investigation, but that had nothing to do with the internal process. And in Howard County, if there's a shooting or a critical incident he's talking about, it's going to be investigated criminally first. And then the Internal Affairs Division will look at it secondly. So some of the information he's asking for, we may not be able to get because it's an ongoing investigation and it'll have to be released by the state's attorney's office and others before we could see it, including the charging committee.
Well,
Just to
You're
piggyback off what.
I'm sorry, Saga, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead, Jim, sorry.
Well, I think you make, Herman, absolutely. I mean, of course, that's why I've got a slide here on tools. At the moment, we are charged with ensuring accountability when the law enforcement agency exercises its police powers, including criminal investigation, as you're pointing out. But we have no ability to go and look at any of the recordings or any of the records or any of the information that is available to the police department and to the prosecutor's office. We're a stakeholder in this now. We're not the public. We are a stakeholder with a statutory duty to ensure accountability in the conduct of that criminal investigation. We're not doing the investigation. Goodness gracious, I did a couple of investigations in my life and I don't want to do that. Not my area of expertise. But we are there and we will be the experts for police accountability going forward. We will be the eyes and the ears to ensure that accountability is being respected in the exercise of those police powers. But to your point, Herman, we don't get very far if the very agency that we are charged with ensuring accountability gets to decide whether we see the information, which is why I'm saying we need to go to the county council. We need to go to the county council.
It's decided by the agency. It's decided by the state's attorney's office.
Can I just interject very quickly here?
Yes.
Yes.
From a legal standpoint, whether it's the state's attorney's office or a law enforcement agency, they have state statutory provisions which shield ongoing. So the PAB wouldn't be able to go to a law enforcement agency or the state's attorney's office and request either body-worn camera footage or whatever if there's an ongoing investigation. That's state law. So, and it's not that the PAB would be forever denied, even if it's a critical incident, the PAB wouldn't be forever denied from reviewing those, whatever documents, body-worn camera footage or whatever. It's a timing issue. Before any of those materials are released either to the public or this board, the investigation has to be completed. And the custodian of records, whether it's the law enforcement agency or the state's attorney's office, has a basis to withhold body-worn camera footage or anything that pertains to an ongoing investigation. So it's not that the board would be denied permanently. It's until the matter has been investigated and adjudicated. So I think I just wanted to throw this out there from a legal standpoint. The PAB would not be able to go and immediately request anything that pertains to a critical incident. I don't know, Jim, you had a name for it.
Yeah.
But you can, if there's an ongoing investigation, the PAB would not be entitled to get those materials.
I'm in full agreement with you, under the current state provisions, which which indicate when the public and other government agencies may go and request public records from another government agency is insufficient. It does not do the job. But the county council, under the code and the charter, can grant subpoena power to boards. It's clearly laid out in county law, the charter and the code, that the county council can pass legislation giving any board subpoena power is how it's written. I would say in this case, very limited, as I've defined it, access to records for the purpose of doing our job, for the purpose of doing what the statute requires us to do. It's giving us a requirement, but the county hasn't given us the tools to do it at the moment. Fully agree with
Okay,
what Sega
so
says.
I
that
will
the-
say,
Marilyn, please.
Jim,
Oh, sorry.
with regards to
Sega,
that point, I don't know that the county council could subvert state statute or state code by giving the PAB subpoena power. So even if a government body has subpoena power, it's still subject to state regulations and state statutes. The county council wouldn't be able to give the PAB subpoena power that subverts state law. So
Yeah, and I would say there, Sega, and this is something obviously that if in fact my suggestions should be looked at more, I mean, obviously that's a decision for the board to make, then I would want to really look hard at that point. My read of the Maryland Public Information Act is that it defines those scenarios in which the custodian of records, the police department, shall we say, may withhold information that is otherwise accessible to the public. And then when the custodian of records has that ability, there is some information which is prohibited from release, and that includes personnel records, although we've got Anton's law now. And it also says in that those circumstances in which the custodian of records, the police department, may release or may withhold in its judgment based upon its view of the public interest. There is nothing in there, in my mind, in the MPIA, which would be subverted by the county council adding a subpoena power for this board to do its job. And I'd really want to run that down hard because I don't see it. I don't see anything in the Maryland Public Information Act, which I've spent some time learning over the last year, that would result in an inability for the county council in its legislative sovereignty, giving subpoena power to this board with respect to those records.
I'm listening intently, and I was listening to Sega, and I was agreeing with every word she said. So now I'm listening to you, and so let me kind of phrase it like this. Are you suggesting that the county council can give the board subpoena power to demand records, whatever it is, in the middle of a criminal investigation?
Yes.
I don't think that's gonna ever happen legally. And I don't know how to even present that to the council. Tell me, if we were to do that, it would be exactly what you just said? And the question that Sega laid out would still be out there. So how would we ask the county to give us subpoena power to intervene in a law enforcement investigation, and depending on where that investigation goes, in the middle of a criminal investigation? It would seem to me, I've never seen that, okay? And if anyone else has seen that, or some version of this, then we can discuss it.
Well, first of all, it was voted on at the county council, so a specific law, a bill, was introduced with amendments to give that power to this board, and it received 2 out of the 5 votes. So it was legally sufficient.
Okay. I don't keep up with the day-to-day. I'm asking a specific question. And my question is kind of leading on what Sega just said, and, it was making sense from a total legal perspective. So my question is, are you suggesting that we should have subpoena power over whatever it is, in the middle of a criminal investigation, and then in the middle of a agency investigation, internal investigation, we could just add, okay, and we have subpoena, whatever you see, we see, and it doesn't matter what your outcome is, so forth. I'm not quite, understanding that.
Can I just say I'm just gonna say one thing. When an agency is doing an investigation, and they're not you know, you don't know what direction they're heading in. Some things they don't release to everybody because it hinders their investigation.
Yep.
So if they were to give you that information and it was to get out, it could corrupt their investigation totally and screw it up. So I would see, even if we tried to get this, that agencies would fight us tooth and nail against that because of the opportunity of corrupting an investigation.
Okay, all right, let
And I'll
me
be-
suggest, let me suggest this. This is getting into like legal advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting very close to, I think what we should do is just take this discussion offline. I don't think, I think we got the point and we've heard like our suggestions, but I'm not, I don't think it's appropriate, but I think it's legal advice.
Nellie, before you close it out, can I just say one thing?
Yes, go ahead.
The only thing that really jumped out at me when Jim was talking was how long it took some of these agencies to complete an investigation. So I think that if we do have a critical incident like he's talking about, that we be kept aware in a timely manner as to how the investigation is progressing, so we don't get into a situation where an investigation lasts 6 months, 9 months, or a year before it's resolved. They would have to report to us to make sure it was a valid reason as to why it was taking so long to complete that investigation.
Thank you. I think, could you, you've heard the discussion, yes?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and, I'd like for you to kind of take a look at this from a legal perspective and just give us your advice on it, if you would, please.
Sure. So are we going into a closed session to do this?
Not today.
Not today.
Yeah, not today, not
Oh,
today.
okay,
but,
that's fine. So do we want to put this on the agenda for next meeting to get legal advice on this issue?
Yes, please. If everyone is in agreement, do we need a specific motion for that? Or can we just?
Yeah, so if you want to go into a closed session to get legal advice, there would need to be a motion, a second, and a vote, and then it would be advertised on the agenda for the next meeting that the board would be going into a closed session to obtain legal advice on maybe I don't even know what to call it, seeking subpoena power from the county council or seeking law enforcement agencies ongoing investigation documents. I don't know, whatever you guys want to call it, we could call it, but you would.
Well, I think, thank you, Sega. I think, and Jim, you correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's more than subpoena power, or perhaps it's, I'm just looking at what you are suggesting.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can formulate it, Jim.
Well, I label it subpoena power because, I brought up the notion of subpoena power because the code specifically allows boards to have subpoena power if the county council, obviously through the legislative process, agrees. I would say this is less than subpoena power, but I understand where you're going. It's different than subpoena power in the sense that we're looking at a very specific set of narrow information that relates to potential police misconduct or to a critical incident. So we don't want, and I'm not advocating for a broad subpoena power. We're not going to go to another agency and hit them with subpoenas. This is what I believe we should be accessing.
No, I realize that. What we're trying to do is get Sega's legal advice on this issue.
Yeah.
So I think she's heard the discussion, but I want to make it clear, and that's why I just stopped, because we have to put it in the form of a motion. I don't want to misrepresent what, I heard subpoena power, but then when I began to talk about it and remembering the discussion, it's a little more and a little less subpoena power. So, I'm not sure how to.
Could I make?
Just 1 second.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
I was just thinking focus, maybe a focus subpoena.
Well, I was going to say, look, here it is on slide 4. So I was going to suggest that if I could formulate a motion that asks for legal advice upon the tools that I've laid out in the first set of bullets on slide 4. And there it is. That's what I'm recommending.
What first set of bullets? The LEA data records and reports?
The LEA data records and reports and the LEA body worn camera. So those 2 sub bullets there.
Sega, did you hear that? and we'll put it in a motion, or Jim will put it in motion.
Can you
But I
repeat
want
that
to
for
make
me
sure-
one more time? I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Shall I have a
Yes,
go at
please,
this?
what is-
Well, this is my practice at a motion, but it would be something like to seek, to go into closed session and seek legal advice relating to the tools that are specified on page 4 of the presentation that I've presented here tonight. The first 2 sub-bullets on page 4. So I'll make that a little bit more refined, but that's essentially what we'd be looking for legal advice on. Is that something that if the board otherwise decided we should be asking the county to pass legislation, giving us this right, whether the county could legally do so?
Okay, so it'd be legal advice on tools the board can use for oversight purposes.
I wouldn't use the word
Essentially.
oversight.
You said you would not?
I would not use the word oversight. I think, we've had a discussion previously about this not being hovering oversight.
Sega, if you have copies of the slides, correct? Hand copies? Okay, because it is the 2 items on page 4, LEA, data records reports, and I'm assuming all, relevant accountability, transparency. Now, are you limiting that to the critical incident, or?
The first one is not limited to the critical
Okay,
incident. It's
so-
limited to accountability and transparency.
And then the second one is LEA body worn cameras recording related to officer involved shooting and so forth.
Okay, I mean, I think this is also, I don't want, I'm not trying to minimize it, but I think what we call it is kind of semantics. How about we just call it get legal advice on tools the board can use for purposes of accountability and transparency. I mean, we do have to
That
describe.
covers it.
Sega, one sort of one thought on that.
He asked it, I'm writing this down. 'cause I know-
Sega, repeat what you just said, please.
I said, we could say, what I'm hearing the board say is they'd like legal advice on tools the board can use and or seek from the county council, in implementing their, role to ensure public accountability and transparency as it pertains to the law enforcement agencies. So, I mean, and I'm taking that from the slide that Mr. Gormley submitted. It's the slide number 4. It really sounds like you all want legal advice on what tools you could use to execute your duties as it pertains to accountability and transparency of law enforcement agencies. So I don't want to make it more difficult than it is. And I think one of the things, I guess what Mr. Gormley is saying is one of the examples is like that subpoena power, but I don't know that that was exhaustive of the kind of tools that that he'd like to see the board get. So, Mr. Gormley, are you okay with that? Just calling it on, get legal advice on tools the PAB can use to ensure transparency
And use or seek from the
accountability
council.
of
Yes, I
LEAs?
absolutely agree with it, with that slide addition that you had earlier. Yeah. Tools the board can use or seek from the county council to execute its
Execute its
responsibilities to
duties.
ensure
Okay.
transparency and accountability. Yeah.
Okay, more importantly, Kiana, did you get that?
He sent it to me in the email,
She said send it to her in an email.
'cause I'm trying to write.
Can we
in
just
the-
do it right? Can we just say it right now? I'll also repeat it, but it's tools the board.
I got get legal advice on tools, and then you'll say use or something else.
The
Yeah.
tools the board can use
Mhm.
or seek from county council to execute its duties relative to police accountability and transparency.
All right, I got the last part. All
Perfect, thank you.
right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good job.
So can I just ask this, Jim, you said that you wanted to, essentially exhaust all options, right? Drill hard on this. So can I ask that you do your own research such that when Sega gives us our legal advice, I don't want us to go down this road of a constant challenging of the information. So if you do your own research, share your research, whatever you find, and then we can have a fruitful discussion.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great suggestion. I forgot to come back to you. I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
But please speak.
I have several points.
Yes.
And one is, well, thank you, Jim, because I think the information you're giving, I'm not sure if I embrace all of that you said, but it made me think about our role a little bit different from how I was thinking it. And for me, it's like, we have to look at this differently, I believe, if we proceed with the status quo in terms of how everything has been or is, we're not gonna move our agenda forward. I don't believe I'm gonna be successful in this role. Because otherwise, I don't need to, I could do what I'm doing, what we want to do here as a private citizen. I just think that we have to be agents of change, and that's neither welcomed nor encouraged. So I think we do have to shake some trees. The police, the sheriff department, I don't think that they're out trying to hurt anybody, but when stuff hits the fan, it's to come around and circle around and try to protect that, and that's just been my experience. And for us to come in and say that we want to hold them accountable and have them be transparent to the public, I don't think it's gonna happen by osmosis. It's gonna happen by something that we have to be able to have access to some data. And I think it means I shouldn't have the same access to data that Joe Citizen has. If I'm a member of this board backed by the county, I should have some additional, powers, not powers, but just access.
Access.
On the last piece, in terms of Jim doing his research, to a certain extent, yes, but also, I think that's what we have legal counsel. And that's what we have an executive assistant, to be able to, if we say that we'd like to do this or to explore this, we would like help from that group, from the group that's assisting this board, to think outside the box and not just say, well, that cannot be done because the law states this. No shade, Sega. I'm not saying that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, but I'm saying in terms of thinking it differently, when the counter argument shouldn't always be, well, they'll never do that. Instead of like, okay, how can we do something? How can we get access to some of this data? How can we work the legislative pace? How can we, in terms of our own expertise, because if we do what we've been doing, nothing's gonna change. 2 cents.
Can I just say one thing, Nellie?
Yes, of course.
And I always think about that because I understand exactly where you're coming from, Ricardo, because I do feel like sometimes I'm the naysayer in the group, like, no, we can't do that. No, we can't do that. And I feel it, and I certainly acknowledge it, and I don't blame you for pointing that out. However, I have to be really careful about what my role is with the board. I'm not a member of the board. I could only give legal advice on items that are proposed or discussed by the board. Okay. So I can't necessarily, I have to walk a very fine line. Now, I'd be happy to think very creatively in terms of how we could work within the parameters of the law to help the board achieve some of its goals with regards to oversight and accountability. And I'm very happy to do that. And while this conversation was happening, I've had some ideas go through my head, which I've previously mentioned just in passing, but I think it looks like the board may be inclined to go into a closed session to obtain legal advice on this issue. And I'd be very happy to go into those things and some of the advice I may have from a legal standpoint in terms of how the board could operate to achieve its goals, but not run afoul of any existing law. So I definitely hear you and I receive it, but I'm just walking a fine line in terms of not being a member of the board, but just giving legal advice to the board.
Thank you for that comment, Sega, because that's all it is. And because for me, I'm not asking for us to, and you have to be there to kind of keep us grounded, I guess, in the legality of what we're doing. So I appreciate the work you do. So, but thank you for the comment.
Yeah, I think, Sega, everybody respects the legal advice. I think we are constrained, well, kind of how Mr. Gloomy responds to it and is perfectly legitimate. Well, what can we do? Okay, we don't have subpoena power, but, you know, what can we do? So thank you for, you know, just agreeing to kind of, like you said, be creative. Because I don't think it's a disagreement, with the bottom line, transparency and so forth. I think there has to be some discussion about the process. And I think if we are creative and use those skills that we all bring, so that's why we're all here, I think we can achieve that goal. At least we can come up with some ideas on, okay, if it's not subpoena power that would invade the criminal process, the investigatory process, okay, well, you know, well, we'll discuss that later, you know. Yes, Paul.
I just got a quick question. I'm just wondering what other boards around the country are doing. I'm curious because I'm sure we're not the first ones to come up with what we're talking about tonight.
Mhm.
I'm sure we're not the first ones in the state to come up with what we're talking about tonight. I'm just curious if anybody knows. I don't know. If anybody knows what other boards have done around the country, because we have police accountability boards, you have civilian review boards, which pretty much are police accountability boards in some states. And I don't know what they do. And I would like to know if anybody knows.
What, Paul, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but Paul, we can put some research together on, Kiana has been reaching out to the other boards in the state. And we've been starting to put together some research on how the other boards, you know, civilian review and how they all kind of work. We can, of course, provide that to the board as a report, if that's not, so that we can kind of have a buffet of what's out there. I think the interesting part about it is because of the law, and I think that board member Gormley has some interesting ideas, but I think in some ways our law is kind of has certain facets that we are mandated to do that are different in other states, but versus their civilian review boards. But we can, of course, put that together in the new year and provide that to the board as something to look at.
Thank you.
Mhm.
You know, I'm familiar with Baltimore, which of course has had a civilian review board for a long time with subpoena power. I mean, that was one of the big issues as the PAB come on board. Other than that, I think that the county legislation is just, so new out there that I think we're still formulating. I mean, this is just from 2021, and I think most counties just scramble to get something organized. These questions about the powers of the board, I know there's a lot of community and public interest in what those tools might be going forward. So.
I was just curious on other states too, because other states have it, and I'm just curious on what they do. And the thing is that if we look at what they've done and we look at what we have, and maybe we can formulate how we want to address it towards the county council based on research that you have from, around the country. And that way we can sit there and formulate, because like I said, it is new to the state of Maryland for us, and it's new to all of us, and we're all trying to recreate the wheel. But if a wheel has been made somewhere else and the tracks are rolling pretty good, maybe we can take and adopt some of what they have, and maybe it might work for us. And I'm just throwing that out there. So
Yeah, board member, the interesting part about the state of Maryland, I think, is because of the replacement of the LOBER, and because of the way that this was sort of implemented. There are facets that are unique to Maryland that are not necessarily the same as other civilian review boards, but we can do that research and bring it back to you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hespeth, if I can ask that, in doing the research, if at the end of it, you could include,
Like the source sites where we got it from?
yes, and it doesn't have to be
Yes.
exhaustive. It doesn't have
No.
to be like, this, but just
No,
general
we can-
evidence of where,
We can provide some source, like a set of the links and things like that, some source sites
Yeah.
that say where we got it from, so it's not that we're
Just be
just kind of
helpful.
putting together stuff. Yeah, we can.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
thank you.
Well, and I wonder if I could just, I wanted to, maybe I'll say I'll finish, because I've had a lot of the warm here, and I really appreciate the opportunity for this discussion. For me, it's the most important discussion we've had, and will continue to be so. But just on the newness, and I'm trying to be this sort of my closeout comment. We are talking about a critical incident. It's happened in the county. I'm being hypothetical. When you look at, during a criminal investigation, whether a body-worn camera recording should be released to the public. I'm not talking about to our board right now. That is a decision which is currently, given the exception in the Maryland Public Information Act for ongoing criminal proceedings, that is a decision that's made by the custodian of records, by the chief of police. I think there's a new kid on the block, and that new kid on the block is the chair of this board. So that a decision that is made now on whether a body-worn camera recording gets released or gets held up for a year, which is part of the problem in these other cases that I've cited, formally a decision made by the chief of police in each case, taking advice from the state's attorney for the county. I believe, and we have this in the body-worn camera recording policy recommendations that my prior organization I used to be on made, I believe that there should be a consultation with the chair of the Police Accountability Board. What's the public interest with respect to this release? You, Madam Chair, can't get to that point if you haven't seen the body-worn camera recording. It's new, and I think the paradigm has changed in this state, and it should change in this county, and I echo and appreciate everything you said there, Ricardo. This is a whole cloth that we're cutting right now. And I think we should be going to the county to give Madam Chair, the power to be the stakeholder that the state law requires you to be in those kinds of decisions. That's sort of my.
I think that's a good suggestion, as all suggestions are. I just think that we need to kind of, let's say, give her presentation. She's heard everything we've said. And then we can go from there. Nobody's shutting down this discussion. I think it's just a matter of how do we execute, and how do we get to where we all agree that we need to be. So I think, any other suggestions or comments or whatever? Okay, thank you very much.
Do the agenda item, like everything.
I'm sorry?
But we gotta.
Do the agenda on the agenda items, okay. All right, what are we including on the agenda?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
so it sounds like the board is interested in going into a closed session next meeting to get this legal advice. I'm sorry, my dog. So I would say that we should get a vote on that.
I thought we did already.
we had the discussion, but we didn't have the vote. Okay,
I think I could probably formulate it based
Okay.
on Sega's,
okay,
and your summary, your fine summary of it. I think I scribbled it down.
okay.
So please allow me to correct if it doesn't come out right, but I'm going to make a motion that at the next meeting, we, the board, go into a closed session to seek legal advice from the county solicitor's office on what tools the board can use or seek from the county council to exercise its duties relative to police accountability and transparency.
And I said,
Okay.
take the vote.
Yeah, we'll take the vote.
Paul, yes.
Jim, yes.
Ricardo Morales, yes.
Arnetta Wire, yes.
Ellie Hunt, yes.
Herman, yes.
Okay.
You need us to repeat any of that? Yeah.
I'm
You
good.
good?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, what else are we doing on the, agenda for next week?
We have to go.
I'm sorry.
So it's the same format, right? It's like all the same things.
Mhm.
Number 3, rules of procedure. All right, we still have the, report, right? We still have the ACC legislation discussion.
Mhm.
And then we go into closed session.
And we go into closed session right there.
Okay, got it? All righty.
Can I just mention, and I think I can shoehorn this in 5 minutes in that existing agenda, that there was a second proposal I was making here, page 5 of the slides, that I suggested we carry to the next meeting because I didn't want to take
Okay,
up any more time. So I wonder if I could just grab 5 minutes at the next meeting to finish that,
Okay.
which is really part of the mission discussion anyway.
so,
Yeah,
yeah,
I got it.
okay, Kiana has it.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we finished?
Kiana, the only other thing you might want to consider also are your meeting dates for next year. I know that we had some, and I just didn't want you guys to forget about, because we've set up dates. I don't know if we have the February or January dates set, so that was the only other thing. Sorry.
Probably a good idea.
Okay, just a minute.
All right, so I got rules of procedure comments, draft annual report and meet and date comments, draft ACC legislation comments, and mission of the board discussion and closed session.
Closed session.
Thanks.
You should have really just worked right off of the agenda from today.
Yeah, that's what I just.
I was just saying,
Yeah.
exactly.
Hey, Kiana, when you do the agenda, can you specifically state the statement we made with regards to what the closed
Yeah,
session?
I wrote it down.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And just in the mission and board discussion will be a closed session.
Yeah.
Okay, wait a minute, Michelle, did you say something about dates for next year? I think, can we delay that until, our next board meeting?
That's
Yeah,
the-
that's-
that's
I'm
on the
sorry.
agenda.
Okay,
That's the agenda. That's what I was saying. And the agenda next year, next one, just talk about, add just to, future dates as an agenda item.
Okay.
But you did say that you all already identified dates?
We had set some, out-
We only have one for December.
we had sent out some dates to you all, but we haven't gotten confirmation on those dates.
Yeah.
For January, February, for next year? Okay,
Why don't you
well, look
send that?
again.
I'll send another one. I'll send
Okay,
another one.
thank you.
Yeah, she sent it out, but we don't have a confirmation. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody did that? No, I thought I responded, so I thought we were into February, but maybe. I'm just-
I'm
Do my sleep,
so-
do my sleep.
I was about to say, that was on your own. 'Cause I'm like, I don't have no dates, we don't have no dates for 2023 yet. So I'm thinking about it again,
You're still
though.
subject to the open meetings. Act.
There you go.
All right, thank you all. I think we're at our end. We have a motion to,
I move to adjourn.
I second.
yes, for me?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, Herman, I'm assuming you're gonna say yes.
Jerry.
We already
assume correct.
Oh.
Yes. Thank you guys for wonderful meeting and working with me, and I'll be back in a minute.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye. Feel better, Sagan.
Thank you.